Wait a minute. Hold on. He was with me when I got saved. He was doing wild things, but his life didn't end up crazy. But I'm over here. I don't really feel like going to this prayer meeting right now. I don't feel like gotta preach this sermon on Sunday. I gotta go serve. I gotta do. Nah, I'm trying to see what's going on and live. I'm trying to go see what's going on in Magic City. Like, I want to know. I'm just curious, bro. I want to know. I ain't never been in there. Have you? Haven't? You know what I mean? Nope.
Well, there's a story for that.
Q, we're back, baby. We're back. We're back.
Finally.
So,
Bro.
You guys may be wondering why we're saying we're back. We had previously recorded episodes, but we were practicing. It was preseason for us. Took a little break, but now we're back. We're going to hit this thing full force, and we're going to get you guys consistent content. So I want to welcome you guys to the Speak Up podcast. My name is Scott. This is Q. Follow us on social media. Speak Up Podcast TT for TikTok, Speak Up Podcast Insta for Instagram, and Speak Up Podcast YT for YouTube. Very simple. Share, follow the whole thing. Let's make sure this thing blows up. And then one day, maybe you can come on the pod with us when we get big, as the Lord sees fit, of course. Q, how you doing, my brother?
Bro, I am chilling. I'm doing well. It's an off day for me, man. I got to just chill for the most part, which is usually hard for me to do.
Yep.
But I'm doing well, man. I'm doing well. Life is good. How about you, man? How's the missus, the baby?
Man, everything is pretty good, man. I think one thing before I get into all that, I do want to let the people know that this podcast, we're going to talk about a myriad of topics. So we go around, we are both Christians, so there's going to be a lot of Christian topics, faith-based topics are going to be on here, but also we want to discuss what's going on in culture, what's going on every day. It's the conversations people have with each other, all sorts of things. So whatever is popping off, whatever's going on, it's going to be talked about here on Speak Up, and me and Q are going to give you guys, our unique perspective. So that's where we at, man. So you're asking me how everything is going. Summer has been pretty good. Yeah, bro. I think this has been a very introspective summer for me because I had to realize a lot of things about myself that probably I was shoveling down, not addressing, not making the proper adjustments where I needed to be, and not having the conversations that I needed to have. And it was eating me up inside because part of me is I'm always that type of person that I want to have poise in every situation. I want to look like I'm poised. I want to look like I'm in control of whatever's going on. I don't want to be too high, and I don't want to be too low. I don't know if that came from sports or if it came from being in the military or whatever. I'm not sure, but that's led me to be able to repress or suppress a lot of things. And over time, that takes a toll on you, both mentally, physically, and spiritually. And I think that summer, that kind of came to a head for me where I was seeing a lot of that drainage come. So yeah, man, I've had to kind of step back from a lot of things that I'm doing, as you know, with serving with Gen X Ministry at All Nations. And I kind of had to step back a little bit and address what I need to address. And that's kind of the season I'm in right now. Those good things. I'm seeing some opportunities where I probably need to address some things from a therapeutic standpoint. So that's something that I'll probably reach out to you about. And yeah, man, from spiritual perspective, that initial zeal that you have when you are first saved and when you're first walking this journey out from a faith perspective, that zeal I underrated how much that allowed me to take in a lot of information and also flesh out and walk out the information that I was taking in. Because now what used to be simple is now a little bit more difficult than what it used to be. And need to take that time to evaluate myself, to see where the gaps have been, and also understand what was going on when I was in that zealous season or zealous stand, and what kind of practices I was putting in that may have been lost, that I need to get back, and just so I've been processing a lot, bro. It's been a very, like to mention again, a very introspective summer for me.
That's dope. Truly, man. That's truly dope. I think it's because I say that not just to say that, but because like I was listening to a podcast by a woman by the name of Nancy Houston, and she was saying that she's a believer, she's a therapist. She said that only about 3% of the population of the world does what she calls soul work, and soul work essentially being the introspection, like sitting with the Lord, asking, like, man, what's it's the Psalm 91, right? Lord, show me, show me my heart if there's any wicked way in me, right? Like, show me what's inside. She was like, only 3% do that. And now I was like, 3% of the whole planet? Like, that's wild to me. Like 3%. And so I appreciate you saying that, bro. Just saying that, like, you've been really, really being introspective. Because I feel like that's hard to do as people, as men too. Like, and there's a lot of ways our culture, our faith, and then you said you had sports and military, bro. Yeah, man. I'm sorry. I'm just kidding. No. But like, it really makes it hard. And let me even speak for myself. Like, it makes it hard to slow down, because to be introspective means to slow down, like, and to really ask yourself the questions that you normally can't ask and keep going. And so for that reason, man, like, bro, I commend you. And I mean, I would echo that too, bro. Like, this summer for me, it was pre-prep for Agape, which is the campus ministry that I and my wife lead at Mercy University. So it's a group of college students, 18 through 25, and we essentially lead the ministry on under direction of our pastor, but we lead the ministry. So it was a lot of pre-prep stuff that we were doing in the summer. So actually, I think the first summer, or the first time in a while since last year, our son passing away, and that was in the summer. We right into the semester, or yeah, dang, yeah, last year that happened. Then we went into the semester of last year, and then coming back out now and finishing spring of that semester and coming back into the summer. We have been going for a hot minute. And so for me in this season, the introspection has looked more like, God, where am I going? Where am I going? Like, as in my family, me, my career, like, where am I going? Because we both definitely felt like we need to transition from Macon, and like he's calling us to something else. But it's just been like, where and why? That has brought up a lot of emotions of fear. Like, Macon has gotten comfortable. It's brought up a lot of the emotions of like, oh, Quentin, you haven't dealt with some stuff, kind of like what you were saying. Like, I haven't dealt with some of the grief with Judah. I haven't dealt with some of my own stuff, like with me. Then the Lord began to kind of reveal to me there's a lot of unforgiveness in my heart, man, towards people that when I transition, I'll probably be in closer contact with. And so definitely for me, in some ways, an uncovering as well, but also kind of like a lot of question marks right now, of like, God, what's next? What's next? So yeah, man, it's an interesting season. It's an interesting season, but I'm grateful for it. Like, I feel like as much as like these type of seasons hurt, and at least for me, sometimes it feels like, oh, it's slowing me down. I often find myself like, Lord is good. It's funny because I don't know if you knew this, but so there's a word. You know how Revelation is the last book of the Bible, and they call it one of the apocalyptic, or one of the apocalyptic books, right? Well, I learned earlier this year that the word apocalypse just means unveiling or revealing.
To reveal, yeah, to reveal.
Thank you.
Correct.
And the book I was reading is a book called Metanoia, and he essentially was saying, like, when we understand the word apocalypse, there are certain moments in our lives that are apocalyptic moments, right? Like COVID, right? For the world was one, right? It was a moment where not just bad things happened, but it revealed stuff in America, stuff in our society. And so I feel like in our own lives, I feel like that is a thing now, like where the Lord will take you through apocalyptic moments in your life where you're like, oh, this one was down there.
You know what's interesting, bro? You mentioned apocalyptic moments, and then you also mentioned Judah. You shared a post earlier this week that went up in regards to what happened to Judah and your family. Obviously, we've known for a long time, but you guys did go public with that information. Could you offer some perspective in terms of what happened and where you guys are now in terms of that whole situation?
Yeah, man, I appreciate that. And that's kind of crazy. Because I think on that post, I'm smirking, but it's because I realized talking about Judah for me has been, and I think continues to be one of the most uncomfortable things I'm constantly having to do. But I know I need to, because not just for myself, for others, you know? And so, like you said, like for a long time, like me and my wife are different in that way. For a long time, like I didn't really post about him, and obviously shared it with close community like you and Steph. But it's tough. But like I also recognize, man, like you know, there's power in testimony, right? So where do I start? So I'll start here. So Judah David was the reason I's first child, or is the reason I's first child, and he came about in a very interesting way because my wife and I actually had a whole plan. Like we had a 5-year plan that we weren't gonna have kids until our 5 years of marriage. We were gonna wait, and I'm very much like that, like A type. And in our second year, no, starting our second year, like a couple months right after our second year anniversary, my wife quits her job because she felt like the Lord was telling her to quit. And the day after, she takes a pregnancy test. She's pregnant. And yeah, and I was like, God,
What year was this?
this was 2022.
22 was what time in 2022?
Yeah. So our anniversary was in August of 2022, and we're going in our second year of marriage. She quits her job. I want to say like the week after Thanksgiving, so it was like November 20 something, like late November. We found out we're pregnant. I think that had to be either November 30th or December 1st. I remember it distinctly because it was going into December. So that is December 1st of 2022 is when we found out she was pregnant. And so from December 1st, oh yeah, because so that month we ended up telling family, going through the joys of that. It was beautiful. And obviously like there was a period in there where I was sad because I was like, God, you messed up my plan, like homeboy, like, and she quit her job, right? So I was feeling a lot, man. I was feeling a lot in that season, and so that's December. January, February rolls around. We're doing well. Baby's growing well. I actually went to Ghana in February, came back doing great. And the week after I got back from Ghana, and this was in February. Week back, no, this was in March. I'm sorry. Week back, I got back from Ghana in March. Man, it's crazy how it happened. We There was a particular morning. It was a Thursday morning. I remember because we were always going to see our doctor on Thursdays. That was usually when we would follow up for the weeks for the to update on like where we are in the trimester and things like that. So I'm sorry. No, it was Fridays we do that. So Thursday, the day before our checkup, we both wake up at 5 a.m. for some reason. Just don't know why we woke up at 5. We just woke up at 5, and I was like, well, if we're waking up at 5, let's go ahead and pray. So we pray. Doris gets up, goes to use the restroom, and she doesn't feel right. She doesn't feel right. And I'll spare the TMI, but she just doesn't feel right. And so I'm like, well, you know what? Let's just go, just in case. We don't know, And she had been having some pain, some sciatica pain and stuff. So we go thinking, all right, it's 20-week mark. Like, we're just gonna check in, see what's going on. We get there, bro, and they tell us, hey, your cervix is short. And for those who maybe are not versed in the pregnancy world, the cervix, and I had to learn this, the cervix is the last, well, not the last, but one of the gateways into which, and so the cervix is short. The shorter the cervix is, it essentially connotes that a woman is dilating. She's opening up for the baby to come. And so they were like, hey, your cervix is short. Like, we don't know what's going on. We need to do a couple more tests. We do a couple more tests. We stay there for like 45 minutes. We're like, what is going on? And at this point, I'm nervous, but I'm also, because we never experienced this. Like, I'm also like, man, like, what's going, like, what is this? Like, maybe just a couple things here we need to check in. Maybe they just need to tell us, like, she needs to take more. She needs to take it more easy, whatever, right? So the guy comes back and just says, really, like, flat, doesn't even really give a lot of concern. He's like, hey, you guys need to go ahead and go to the main hospital now, because this is an emergency. Doesn't tell us what the emergency is. Doesn't tell us, just the short cervix. She's like, you guys need to go. So we're going, and so we leave, and I'm like, what is going on? We're both like, what is going on? We call our folks. No, we hadn't called our folks yet. We get there, they admit her at the hospital, they lay her down, they examine her again, and they're like, hey, we're sorry to inform you, but you are right now in the process of going through what they call preterm labor, which essentially is saying she's going through labor before the baby's fully termed, right? And they're like, we need to get in here and we need to stop it, stop the labor, stop you from contracting, and then we're gonna try to stitch your cervix up to keep it closed. And so at this point, like, man, we're like scared, like, what? What do you mean the baby's coming out? And I mean, my wife is losing it because we've never experienced this. And so that began a journey, man, of just sometimes I can honestly say it felt like hell on earth. Like truly felt like hell on earth.
At any point during that time period, as you guys are going through that, I know that whenever you go through a tough time, there's always a testimony to be told. But in real time, as you were going through that, how was your faith affected? Like, did you think that God was punishing you, or did you feel like this was a trial that God was putting you guys through to make you stronger? Was there any kind of perspective from that standpoint?
Wow, bro, that's a good question. And honestly,
Well, you got to give me a good answer.
No pressure. Ugh, no. Man, I would actually say I think this is the part, to your point about testimonies, right? Like, I think this is the part that I've learned as a believer. We have to tell our testimony throughout. Don't wait till it's done. Because, like, and you've said this to me before, right? The difference between transparency and vulnerability, right?
I said that. Okay.
Yeah, bro,
You
you
cook
know
it up.
you. I'm
I
telling
can
you,
cook it
boy,
up a
speak
bit.
up, man.
Hey, man, speak up
Yeah.
podcast.
Oh, and I think I saw this really at play because we were talking about transparency and vulnerability, and the reality that it's one thing to be transparent, right? I think transparent is what we is the vulnerability we give with that has Jesus glitter on it, you know. Or like, yeah, 2 months ago I was struggling with lust, and the Lord delivered me, right? That's transparent. Vulnerability is when you're in the moment and you're about to go click on the porn website, right? And you call somebody and say, hey, man, like, I need help right now. Like right now. You know what I'm saying? And so for me, going through that process, man, it was messy. It was messy. It was Job like messy. Like, it was like at first we were scared, terrified. Like, I'm talking about, like, faith out the window. Hadn't, like, forgot to pray. And then when we got the cerclage done, which is the stitch, I went into, like, super spiritual mode. Like, I was like, God is testing us. We need to pray and fast. I started to feel like maybe this is a demonic attack, right, on my seed. And so, bro, like, I go into fasting, prayer, spiritual warfare mode. But the subtle thing is, at the same time, there was a huge lack of faith because I was still trying to do everything on my own. I was working 3 jobs at 2.5 jobs at that time, Scott. Try to keep the family up. I didn't even have to, but I felt like I did. I needed to, while trying to balance the Reese being in the hospital and still not really telling anybody. Trying to show that, like, Superman, which really showed a lack of faith. Like, I gotta carry this. And so I was there, like, fighting, fasting, fighting, fasting. When he went to the NICU, like, there was a point when they said he wasn't gonna make it, and, like, we were hollering and blowing tongues, or as Africans say, blasting tongues in the NICU. And, like, his heart rate went up, and I was like, it's a miracle. So this whole time I'm thinking like, man, God is really putting us through the ringer. But in my mind, I'm like, okay, we're gonna come out the other side. He's doing this for a reason. The story is gonna be immaculate. Like, this is gonna be the most fire story ever. Like, I'm finna be preaching on Sunday like crazy, right? Like, and then day 5 comes in the NICU, and at this point, we were going back and forth home, and I don't wish that on my worst enemy. Going home and them telling you, hey, go home because he might survive tonight, he might not, but you guys don't need to stay here. So go home and sleep, and we'll call you if he doesn't. And so you're literally going to sleep. Like, I wake up, they may say he's gone. They may call me middle of the night, and we rush over there, and he's dying, and we might not get there. Like, you're literally in a waiting moment, and you can't control nothing. Like, you can't control nothing. And so day 5 comes. We go to bed. Yeah, we went to bed, and they call us probably like 12 a.m. and they're like, "Hey, he's not gonna make it. He's not gonna make it. I need to go ahead and get there." And so at first, man, we're driving over there, and I don't think it hit me yet, but I'm like, "This is not a testimony I was thinking about. This is not a testimony." And so we get there, and the heart rate starts going down, and they asked us if we can hold him. And as I'm holding him, I'm like, this is not what I thought was going to be in the story. And bro, it was like a gut punch. And I remember, man, I still tear up thinking about it. I was angry. I was angry, bro. Because I was like, bro, I fasted. Like, I'm sacrificing, I'm fasting, I'm worrying. Like, what have I missed? What have I missed? And that destroyed my faith because to this day I tell a story at a time that after he died and my wife is crying, I literally turn my back on everybody and I go to sleep. I go to sleep because I'm like, this is stupid, and God, you have failed me, and like I was angry, bro. Um, and for a first like the first half of that grieving season, I was angry. I was angry. I felt like the Lord lied to me. And it was just like different questions of like, Lord, like, why save him and then for him to die? Like, why have us go through the fasting and then the miracle, and nurses are crying because they're seeing us praying and worshiping, and like some nurses are like coming back to the faith and then die. Like this job. And so to answer your question, bro, it was really, really rough, and my faith was really, really taking a toll on me. Yeah, man.
The faith being tested angle portion of it, that's something that I've been wrestling with as well. The reason I'm saying that is because, to your point, you were going through something that you've never experienced before, and you were believing God to provide a miracle. And it was almost like someone was playing in your face, because when you guys were bashing tongues, we got a heart rate that started going up. So we're like, yo, God doing something. Let's go, let's go, let's go. Even if it didn't happen consciously, maybe subconsciously, you were believing that, man, God's gonna make this happen regardless, man. This is just a little test. You know how God is, man. He make you think that you about to lose, and then boom, at the end you gonna win. But we've all heard a lot of testimonies that are just similar to that. Is, hey, we did everything we were supposed to do, but God didn't come through. So our reaction is supposed to be, what was God trying to teach us in that season? But if we're being completely honest, you talked about vulnerability. I don't really care what he was trying to teach me. I care about what the result I was trying to get. That's what I'm feeling in the moment. You talked about that season you were going through when you were angry. And that anger is real, because I'm like, God, look, man, I get it. You were talking to the devil. You had the devil tempt Job because Job was doing everything he was supposed to do, and you wanted to. I got it. I understand the. Look, we've read the stories, but God, please, this one, I don't need this. I don't need the games on this one. Like, God, please, my son is dying. Can you just revive him, and we can deal with all that other stuff later? Did any of these thoughts pop up to you when you were in that season of anger? Because that's a lot of thoughts that do come up when I'm thinking about, and this is speak up. So we're talking in real time now. Not talking about when you share the testimony and you've understood the lesson. I'm talking about in real time. When I'm angry, I don't want to blame God because you're not supposed to. Nothing good ever comes from blaming God. We've read enough Bible to know that, hey, blaming God, being angry at God, it really doesn't yield anything. So why even waste your time doing it? It brings up the fact that not that I condone it or co-sign it, but I understand why some people choose to walk away from God. Because there's some gaps that we're missing in the nature and the character of God that we need to connect with. But when we are going through trials and we're going through times that are really that are distressful to us, we don't care about none of that. We care about getting out of our situation, and then we can get to the lesson. We don't care about the lesson in the times when they're bad. Like, yo, let's just, God, please deal with this. And then when we're done dealing with this, then we can do classroom stuff. I'm not really in the mood to, man, I'm doing all this praying and stuff like that. I'm doing all this praying because I really want my family member to be alive. I'm doing all this praying because I really want that job. I'm doing all this praying because I really want to build that. I really want that house. I'm doing all this praying because I really want that spouse. I'm doing all of that. And we understand that our relationship with God is not supposed to be transactional that way. But the reality of the situation is that when we do try to go for those transactional things, the human nature in us has to respond somehow in some way. How have you what do you think about that thought process when you were going through that time of anger?
Yeah, no, bro, it's funny because I remember like it was yesterday when we the night on day 4 before day 5, because day 5 is technically, it was like right at the cusp, right, of day 5. We had done a Zoom call with family, and there was a particular pastor that came on. I actually didn't know this pastor. I was like, why is he on this call? But anyway, and he said something that actually pissed me off, like royally pissed me off. We were praying faith, right? We were saying we have faith. Let's keep praying. God's going to do a miracle. And this pastor came out of nowhere, and he was like, hey, while we have faith that God will heal Judah, there comes a point where we have to trust his will. And I was like, what? I was like, you can get off Zoom, bro, because I don't know what you're talking about, but no. Like, his will is for Judah to be healed.
Listen,
Like, I don't
his
want to hear that.
will is that he will bring Judah back. That's his will.
Exactly.
That's what I'm thinking right now. Like, I'm not thinking about none of what you talking about. Like, let's just keep it buck. Like,
110%. I was like, what are you talking about? And if this is what you were invited to come and say, you can get off the phone. I mean, the Zoom. Like, you can get off, because what? Like, I don't need that energy right now. You're not in the NICU with me. I was pissed. And so when he passed, to your point, I was like, two things went through my head. Either I have failed because this was not God's will, and I have royally failed. In my first test of fatherhood, I did not protect my son, and I have failed. All right. And then the other thought came to me of, God, you don't know what you're doing. And I will never let you drive the ship of my life again, because I trusted you and you screwed up. You don't know what you're doing. I distinctly remember I was so angry, Scott. And like, I've never been a angry alpha type of guy. But I remember once driving past the hospital to go to a coffee shop. This was like early in the grief, like a month after. And I remember being so angry when I got to the coffee shop. I literally wanted to run through the coffee shop and tear everything off the wall and like throw everything on the ground.
hey man, if you had done it, man, look, I would have came visit you. I would have. You know what I mean? I'd be like, yo, my boy Quentin got a rap sheet? Okay. Yes, sir.
Like a street fan,
Well, let me
right?
find out, man. We're gonna see you on the shade room tearing off something.
No, probably, because I would have looked like a whole hooligan, bro. Man, I was pissed, Scott. I was hot, and ultimately was like, God, I don't think you know what you're doing. And I think that's a part people don't talk about. And it's crazy, man, because like even when we talk about Job, Job goes through that, and people don't want to talk about that. People want to talk about when Job grieved at the beginning and when at the end he's like, "Blessed be the name of the Lord." People don't want to talk about the fact that halfway through the book, Job is accusing God, like, "God, you made me your enemy." Like, yeah, like,
But see, Q, you know what's interesting? We have the privilege of knowing how the book of Job ended.
wow.
We have the privilege of knowing that. And it's interesting because a lot of the times when we're offering advice or we're preaching or whatever the case may be, we read backwards forward. We know that Job appreciated God at the end. So because you know that, it gives you a perspective on how the beginning started. So if you know how the story gonna end, oh yeah, okay. So God tells the devil to go ahead and try Job. Job does that. He gets angry, blah, blah, blah. Because we know that how the end gonna end. We know that already. So it gives you a different perspective. It's a different perspective when you don't know how the story gonna end. And then you have to respond to what God is doing in real time. So you got to think of yourself, when you put yourself in Job's shoes, without him knowing how his book ended, he was dealing with that in real time. And that's what a lot of us deal with. And that's what a lot of things, and one of the things I wanted to bring up with you was this idea of updating your resume as a Christian. And part of that is I'm thinking, especially through this introspective summer I've been asking myself a lot of questions. And one of the questions I ask myself is that I think Christianity, the way that we view it or the way that we preach it or the way that we expect it to be, whether it be in America, whatever in the world, however in the world, how I've heard it preached, how I've heard it seen, it seems very much to me that it's day to day. The reason being, I believe that, or I see that, is how many times have you gone to a retreat and there's an altar call at the retreat? How many times have you gone to maybe a church service or something and they ask you to rededicate your life to Christ or to do all these things? And I'm like, yo, that's beautiful and those are wonderful things to do. But I'm thinking, wait a minute, I'm saved. So being saved, by the mere definition of the word being saved, is that I'm saved from eternal damnation and I'm going to spend eternity with Jesus at the right hand of the Father. But it seems to me that there's a caveat with that. The caveat being is that you remain faithful to the cause. And whenever someone comes in interaction with you, you better be showing that you're 100 for Jesus. And if you're not, your faith walk is going to be questioned. There's going to be a question about what you're doing. It doesn't even matter that you had 6 good days, Q. If I catch you on that 7th day and you're doing something crazy, I'm going to question what you were doing during them 6 days, whether it was real or not. And now for me, looking at that, and I'm like, yo, wait a minute. All that time I was praying, all that time I was doing this, all the time I was doing that. You tell me there's an opportunity, all this sacrifice that I was doing, that I was believing that I was doing in the name of Jesus, and I was praying and serving and doing everything that I was supposed to do and listening. Because I'm going through a season, there's an opportunity that if my life ended in this season, that God was going to look at me in the face and tell me I never knew you. Yo, that takes the air out your sails, bro. The wind out your sails, because you're like, oh, why am I even doing this for? Because let me have a bad day and let my life end on that bad day. Everything else that I did doesn't even matter, because that's the way that, if that's truly the way that salvation works. Because the way we say that salvation is by the Spirit, and it's a gift from God apart from our works. But the way that we hold people accountable and hold each other accountable to that salvation is your works better be matching your salvation, or that means you may not really be saved. So now I may be doing great, and then I go through a rough patch, like you were going through that season where you were angry with God. Let you be caught in that season by somebody, man. And they'd be like, yo, Q, you sure you're a Christian, my boy? Because how are you responding to God in this manner if you truly believe in God? So I'm asking myself, this salvation thing, it's the work of the Spirit. When I'm reading the book of Romans, I'm understanding that this thing is gifted to me. Like it's not something I earn. It's a gift. It's salvation. It comes from Jesus because of what he did on the cross. And God, the Father, is going to see us through Jesus. But in real time, as a Christian, in real time, walking this thing out, when my affections may not necessarily be pointed to Jesus for a season or 2 or 3, my faith or the fact that I was saved is questioned. So I start asking myself, am I a false convert? Or did I lose my faith at some point? But then you bring up that question and people are like, you can't lose faith. You can't lose your salvation. Some people say you can. Even the mere fact that that's a debate brings me to the conclusion that I mentioned at the beginning. I really feel like the way that we walk the screen, it has to be day to day. You have to constantly update your resume to prove that you are saved. Like, what's your perspective on that?
No, so like one, I think that's one of the reasons why you mentioned like people, what's it called? They leave the faith. As I think it's because I asked somebody the other day. I was like, I asked them, you know, what do you think the gospel is, right? And the person was like, well, the way the gospel was taught to me, it was a gospel of image. And I was like, what you mean? And she was like, well, to me, from what I've noticed, the gospel is who looks the best in the eyes of the Christians around them, and who can better judge what other people are doing wrong, who can call it out the most. And so she was like, that's the gospel to me. And I was like, dang, because essentially what she was saying is she grew up with a gospel that was of works. Like, how do I keep my record visibly clean more than others in my church? And what we ended up talking about, and I was sharing with her was, and it's one of the probably the more recent revelations that I guess I've been wrestling with, is the reality that this salvation thing and this salvation, this justification, right? Salvation, justification, and sanctification, which is, I know those are really big words, right? Salvation being saved.
Yeah. Hey man,
Justification.
listen, I know you got that Mercer education now. You go ahead and hey man. Yeah,
And then break it
bring
down. That's hilarious. Well, and like justification obviously just being that we are made right with God, right? That God no longer sees us as sins because Jesus died, right? And then sanctification being we are being made more like Jesus, right? We day to day we're being made more like Jesus through the Spirit.
man, and you know what? Justification, sanctification, man, those two are fighting in our faith right
What?
now. Those two right now are fighting in our faith because and you know what, Q, and I sorry to cut you off on that, but it's not a new problem. This is a problem that they even dealt with in the early church back to the Martin Luther days with the Reformation, is this position of justification and sanctification overworking. Like, your justification comes from God. Your sanctification comes from God. Your works are not supposed to play into your sanctification and your justification, as it were, meaning that the good works that you have and the good works that you do, you're doing them unto God for your neighbors, friends, and family. You're not doing them in order to prove that you're in a certain position with God. You're doing it as a service to your friends, family, and neighbors unto God for the grace of God. And we struggle with those two so much.
Because we want credit as people. We want credit. I'm starting to understand why they say the gospel is so scandalous. Because I get exactly what you said, bro. I don't know why it fires me up because it's been convicting me. We want credit at some point. We want credit for our ability to become more holy. I think I was listening to the Perry's podcast, and they said something so good. They were like, if you really think about all the other religions, it's all based off of the work we can do, right? And it's attractive, right? The Muslim faith or the Nation of Islam is how pious can we be? How strict can we get? How more disciplined can we get to show more piety to our faith, right? Like, and what I realized, we struggle because we can't fathom, to your point, that our justification, salvation, sanctification comes from God, and He set it up that way. No one comes to the Father unless the Spirit draws them. It takes Jesus for us to be justified. Then God's like, I'm not even gonna leave it up to y'all to walk out sanctification. I'm gonna give you Holy Spirit. Just so you can't take any credit. You know what I'm saying? And I love what you said, bro, because I think the tough part is I think about like something like the fruit of the Spirit, which is we always say like love, joy, peace, patience, kindness. And my pastor said one time, he was like, the fruit of the Spirit is not for God. It's for us and community. We don't need patience. Yes, we need to walk in patience and wait on God, but we need to be patient with. I need Scott to be patient with me. I need Scott to have self control, not to knock my head off when I piss him off. I need joy when I'm suffering in this life. I need self control when I want to look at that girl and I'm like, man, I shouldn't objectify her. I need the fruit of the Spirit for people around me, like you said, God. You know what I'm saying?
It's the fruit of the Spirit. The fruit comes from the Spirit. It's given by the Spirit. When you get the fruit, the purpose of that fruit is to be nourishing for the people around you, for yourself, so that you can also in turn share with the people around you. And if we're all doing that, then we're following God's purpose. But we've turned it into a works thing. And Q, to your point, you say, anytime we bring that up, the retort is, it's not about works. It's not a work-based religion. It's not a work-based religion. Well, man, you could have fooled me because we treat it like that. I'm keeping it, but it don't matter. I'm not even saying America, like anywhere, bro. We treat it like that because I'm just going to ask a simple question. How do you know someone's a true Christian versus being a false convert? Because I'm just saying, how do you know?
That's tough to answer. It's tough. It's very,
but you know, the circles, you know, you'll go around. Go ahead.
And to your point, like, you know what? I always want to give this preface because I feel like we have to start to learn to be comfortable with tension as people. And like, I know people are waiting right now for us to give the resolve, right, on this tension. But like, I almost sometimes ask myself, because yes, like the truth is the truth and the doctrine is doctrine, right? Like, but your question is so good because most of us will run quick to saying, well, if we continue in sin, Paul says if we continue in sin, then, you know, we're not of the Lord, right? But like the question becomes, well, what does continuing in sin look like? How long? And how do you really determine that? And I find a lot of times I get why Jesus spoke in parables, because you can't answer that question without talking about the reality that it's a both and, right? Like it's a both and that doesn't fit neatly. It's a both faith and works, but it doesn't fit neatly into how we often think it should. Like, oh, you have faith and it should produce works. Like,
look, let's speak up, bro. So let me say this. Let me say this to I'm not, and me and Q are not saying this. Listen, God gave us the conscience for a reason. We know in yourself, if you look in the mirror, what type of life that you're leading and how committed you are to God. Unfortunately, other people can't know that for real. They can kind of understand based on what you show them in the truth, but man, there's some real folks out here that know how to manipulate, and they can make real look fake and fake look real. So I understand that. What we're saying is, man, we're not advocating for you to have a loose faith where you're just like, man, you know what? I went to that altar call, so now I can live my life however I want. We're speaking specifically to the crowd that is really wrestling with God and wrestling with this thing and really walking it out. Maybe you were saved when you were a teenager and you were really excited, you were doing a lot of stuff, and then over time that thing went down. Maybe you went out to college and you got into the real world and you saw things you've never seen before and it had an effect on you. And now you're wondering whether the faith that you had when you were a teenager was the real one or the faith that you have now is the real one. That's maybe something you're wrestling with, and it's something that you have to contend with. Because let's just keep it a buck, Q. If someone met you when you first got saved and you were super zealous, they'd be like, bro, this dude's on fire for God. There'll be no question about the authenticity of your walk. But if they met you 10 years later after you've gone through some life, and maybe them sermons ain't coming off of rolling off of your tongue the way they used to, they'd be like, you know what? I don't know, man. Were you real? Were you real then? Or is this the real you now? And they're asking that question why you've been asking that question a lot of times. And that's the wrestle, is that, man, I'm not quick to discount somebody's faith. What I want to know is I need to understand what the perspective is. How did you get to this point? Because Q, you got to think about it. No one has to do anything. You don't have to go to church every Sunday. You don't have to serve. You don't have to pray. You don't have to read your Bible. The fact that people are doing those things, but then also struggling with another part, there is something there that is struggling for expression that needs to be addressed in a godly manner, and it hasn't been addressed yet. Because, bro, like, what stops somebody from just not going to church? Because you're telling me if I go to church and I pray and I serve and I read and I do all these things, I'm still going to hell? Well, hell, why don't I just go to the club and party and do what I want to do anyway? If the story gonna end that way, you know what I'm saying?
And that's what I get into, and that could be a whole conversation about the whole predestination stuff, right?
Man, shoot, we here. Hey, man, come on now.
A lot of times, that's
I'm not sleepy yet. Let's go.
Look, I think that's where a lot of that, man. I think some for a lot of my predestination folks, I'm just gonna say it. I was just having a conversation with a few friends about this, and this is for a lot of my Calvinist folks. I said the word. Here we go.
Hold on. Predestination is what?
So, yes, let me break that down. So, essentially, predestination meaning that for a lot of, not all, so this is just what my understanding, a lot of my Calvinist people, the belief is that predestination is essentially that God, from the beginning of the work of time, had already predestined or pre-prepared people who were going to be saved and go to heaven, and people who are not going to be saved and go to hell. And on an extreme version of that, essentially it would mean it doesn't matter what the person who was predestined to go to heaven does or predestined to go to hell does. This is what it is. God is predestined. Now there's people wide on the spectrum. So I want to say that too. But my struggle with that a lot has been that very thing you just mentioned, Scott, which is, so what, like, it has people either doing two things, either saying, well, heck, I low-key don't know if where God's placed me. And heck, if he's placed me in hell already, well, shoot, let me go and live it up here. Or live a life where I'm constantly trying to figure out which camp am I in? Am I in the predestined to heaven camp, predestined to hell camp? And I think ultimately for me, what I'm realizing is we have to stop focusing. Our first focus shouldn't be on the result. It should be on relationship. It's the wrong R, relationship. Because to me, like, I think about my relationship with my wife, and like, I don't, like, bro, like, as much as I am intentional about making sure, or try to be making sure I'm a good husband, I don't spend every waking moment with my wife in fear, like, man, are we close to divorce or not? Are we close to divorce or not? Are we close to divorce or not? What if that thing I just did it's gonna make us divorce? That would literally destroy me. You know what I'm saying? At least, but what I do spend time focusing on is her. How can I continue to love her? How can I continue to be there for her? And trust that my focus on the relationship would yield beautiful results at some point. And it's not going to be a whole bunch of mess, right? Like, we're going to go through the honeymoon season, and we're going to have great times. And then we're going to hit rough patches like Judah. But if every time when I confess, actually, like, a lot of times for us, when we've hit rough patches, I have gone to the oh my gosh, like, we need to go to marriage counseling. Oh my gosh, we're going to be divorced. Like, oh my gosh, like, I'm a terrible person. Like, I might not need to be married, right? But I just think to myself, and even right now, I don't have a scripture to go with that, but I just think to myself, like, if this is truly a relationship with the Lord, once he saves me and he brings me into his fold, just like marriage, I don't know how much it merits me to focus on where I'm at every day rather than just the relationship. because then I'm so busy doing that, I'm not even focused on the relationship, you know. And I don't even know that, and that's really fresh and new for me in this season. Like, so I don't have a lot with that, but yeah, yeah, man. I don't know. Tell me your thoughts on that.
Look, desire begets discipline. Experience begets desire. That's something I was thinking about as you were speaking.
Hold on. Say that one more time.
Okay, hold on now.
For the
Let me.
people in the virtual back.
Yeah, yes, sir. Let me adjust my mic here. Make sure it's okay. All right. Desire begets discipline. Experience begets desire. You know, everybody says in order to achieve something, you have to be disciplined, right? To achieve something. Like you got degrees, you went to school, you did these things, you achieved something. You achieve that through discipline. One thing that people don't talk about, though, is that it is difficult to be disciplined to something that you're not desiring. That's the toughest thing to do because you grow, number one, you grow resentment to whatever that thing is because you're doing a lot of stuff that may be uncomfortable that you don't feel like doing, but you don't even really want whatever you're doing. You just maybe feel like you have to do it. People that go to jobs that they don't like, they got to do it. The bills got to get paid somehow. It's discipline, right? You get up, you have to be there at a certain time. You do your job and you leave at a certain time. It's a discipline. But if you don't really want to be there, you don't enjoy what you're doing, you have no desire to do anything with whatever you're doing at your work, you're going to resent that job over time. And other parts of your life are going to be affected because of that resentment that you've been developing. Now, the other piece that I was talking about, experience begets desire. It's very interesting, and I've noticed this pattern. A lot of the people that go hardest for God, when you listen to their testimonies, they used to go hard the other way. Like it wasn't even on some like, I was just chilling and you know what, man, I felt like I needed to get saved. You saw those TikTok videos and those IG reels, like people will post flashback pictures of what they used to do, like they'll be drugged out or like in the club partying and stuff, and then it like flips and transitions to them reading a Bible, and it's got like nice fluffy music in the back, like God save me and stuff. And I'm like, bruh, of course you are living like this. You were wilding back then. Of course you are. I understand why you are living the life that you're living. I understand why you go as hard for God as you're going hard now, because you had the skill set of going hard for something. You just had it misdirected. That you brought that skill set to God's side when he impressed on your heart. The experience that you had, the trauma that you went through when you were living that life outside of Jesus, beget the desire that you have for God because you realize how precious God is. And because you realize how precious God is and how ugly that other side is, guess what? Now you are disciplined you're using that desire to fuel your discipline in Christ. That's why Q is hard for people, and I'm going to keep it, but for Nepo babies to be Christians for a long time. I'm not even talking about PKs. That's a whole nother thing. I don't know nothing about that. I'm talking about people, you got saved really early. You ain't getting no experience, no life, and you seeing everybody doing it, but you've been on this path. A lot of them be crashing out. We talk about the success stories, but a lot of them folk be crashing out. And the reason why they're crashing out is because there was never, the desire wasn't built up enough to fuel the discipline long term. The discipline came before the desire. The desire came before there was an experience to fuel the desire. So the desire was here. The discipline came here. But then over time, you start noticing like, wait a minute, hold on. He was with me when I got saved. He was doing wild things. But his life didn't end up crazy. But I'm over here. I don't really feel like going to this prayer meeting right now. I don't feel like gotta preach this sermon on Sunday. I gotta go serve. I gotta do. Nah, I'm trying to see what's going on and live. I'm trying to go see what's going on in Magic City. Like I want to know. I'm just curious, bro. I want to know. I ain't never been in there. Have you? Haven't? You know what I mean? Nope.
Well, there's a story for that.
Hey man, we'll tell that story. But look, for me, I ain't never been in that. You feel me?
And maybe too, and
Yeah.
that's actually that perspective because we talked about that, like how
Hmm.
I definitely crashed out in college all
But
the way.
would you consider okay, let me ask you this though. Let me ask you on that crashing out.
Yeah.
Do you think it was crashing out from the perspective you're coming from, or it was like crashing out, crashing out? Like,
Mm.
do you think it was just like, did you dibble and dabble, or did you really just say, man, you know what, God, man, I forget you, dog. I'm about to be living however I want to
Oh, that's
live.
a good point.
You because that's the part. It's a struggle that way because we go through these things like sure anything that you do outside of God is you could consider a crashing out, but
Yeah.
I think the perspective that gets shared when we're talking about living a life apart from Jesus is that you were all in on that and
Oh.
you left being all in on that and you became all in on God. But it seems like
Mm.
you have like a nuanced view on that and you had a nuanced perspective and experience. So yeah, go for it,
No,
brother.
that's a good clarification. Definitely nuanced. Yeah, because it definitely. I think there was parts that I went head first, then there was parts that was dibble, and then there's parts that was dabble. Right? Like there was definitely because like, and I actually really appreciate the analogy of experience getting desire because.
You know what the
Huh.
on fire saints would say you were lukewarm. That's the word they like these days. You know, even though
Definitely,
they're not
definitely.
using that term right, but you know that's another story for another day. But go ahead, go
That's
ahead,
another,
go ahead, go ahead,
woo!
go ahead, go ahead, go ahead, go ahead, go
That's
ahead, go
another
ahead.
episode.
Yeah,
That's
go
another
ahead. Yeah,
episode.
we gonna need to do something on that. But go ahead, go ahead,
Oh
go ahead.
man, no, I think yeah, because like definitely in the area of sex and lust, I was neck deep in that, like neck deep, but I think even that to your point, there were periods of neck deep where I'm in it and I'm like I'm doing my thing, whether I went to a strip club or whatever, but still low key feeling like man, I shouldn't be here. You know what I'm saying?
Man, Q, I feel you on that because it's interesting, and I'm gonna let you keep going. But I
Yeah,
wanted to bring this up because as soon as you said that,
yeah.
it's very interesting to me when people say they were struggling with fornication. Because not struggling with lust, struggling with fornication. I'm like, bro, you had that much access that it became a struggle. Like, bro, dude, I wish it was a struggle for me. Shoot, like I didn't have that kind of access that it was a struggle. I mean, lust, yeah, sure. You know, we had to fight that in our head and stuff like that. But you had to struggle because you were sleeping with too many people. Like it was like that. Hey, man, you on a different side of the streets than me, dog. But go ahead, go ahead.
You know what's funny? I was talking to one of my good friends here in Macon. He's on this side. He's not married yet. He's on the side right now. He's like, a lot of the women come to him, and I'm like, man, that's a different struggle, bro. Because
I don't know nothing
like
about
for
that.
me, and like I don't even like people saying I struggle with fornication because again, I feel like that's the prettied up thing. Just say you were fornicating and you were head deep. Like struggle for me, I guess maybe internal struggle, but struggle for me connotes there's a push and pull. You were like, nah, I ain't gonna go there at 12 a.m. But man, I want to. Nah, no.
QQ, I'm just gonna keep it a buck with you. I'm gonna keep it a buck with you.
Go ahead.
This podcast,
Yes,
Speak Up Podcast, this is us,
yes,
right? This
sir.
is us, right? This is me
Yes,
and you
sir.
talking. This is just me and you talking. When it comes to fornication, there was gonna be no struggle. Cause I don't know when that next opportunity gonna come. You feel me? If that 3 a.m. text come in, I'm going, bruh. Like there ain't no, I'm not thinking about it. I'm just keeping it. I'm going.
But
I'm in the whip right now because I don't know how she gonna feel 3 hours later. Because you know they be getting in these moods, bro. You feel me? So you
man,
might miss that opportunity. So luckily for me, I never had those 3 a.m. and those 12 a.m. texts, whatever,
yeah,
come through like that. So it never
yeah.
became a struggle that way. But I'm just saying, man. Hey,
No,
if you got to go
that's
back and
funny.
forth like that, you better than me, my boy.
Right? You know what's funny too, man? Like when I think about that season, right? Like that, people don't want to talk about the fact that the problem with sin, it's not that it's not fun. It's fun.
Okay.
It feels good. I know evil gonna get sin is fun. I'm gonna say it again. Sin is fun. It's not that it's not fun. It feels good. That's why it's pleasurable. I think what people miss is because I look back and I look back, man, yeah, I had fun. Is the fun never produced anything. It was dead. Yeah, I have fun in that moment and I feel dead. Yeah, I had fun and yeah, I'll be the strip and I'll go to the strip club and be like, oh man, this is really cool. It's fun. And it was dead. And I think people have to be honest that if people are not honest enough to say, man, what the thing that I'm about to fall into is fun to me. Lord, it feels good. I want to do it.
So wait a
Like,
minute. So let me ask you this: the strip club was lit? Because it seemed
bro,
like it was a waste of time to me. Like I'm just like, bro, I'm spending all this money, and I mean,
see, post, like, what do they call it? Post clarity or whatever. You realize
yeah,
how much of a waste of time it is. Like, it's definitely like or a waste of money. And it's kind of an interesting story. So the way it happened, unfortunately for me, fortunately I guess I should say, or fortunately for me, was I was with a few international students, and that particular day. Now I also say, because I don't want, I guess I should be fully accurate, authentic. I didn't go to strip club multiple times. I went once. All right. So I guess I shouldn't also over embellish, right?
yeah. Let's not, because you know that happens too. We
Yeah,
embellish it a little bit. Yeah, you went one time. All right, go ahead.
yeah, yeah. And we got in for free because, and we were underage. We got in for free because the guy wanted to show the international students a good time because they're in America. So we got there, and then we didn't have to spend our money because we were international students, and I was supposed to be from London. So I'm just gonna I was supposed to be an English
Oh,
dude.
the Manda, man.
The mandem.
Okay, bro.
So I was definitely on some low key imposter stuff, right? But like, to your point, bro, in the afterwards, you're like, oh, this was really like, all I did was go somewhere where I was hard for 2-3 hours and did nothing with it, right? And and then I'm going home, and really at that point, I'm like, bro, what was all this for? It was a waste. But in the moment, in the moment, you're like, you're feeding your flesh. You're like, man, this is great. Oh my gosh, like, this is great. This is great. And I think that's the distinction to me, is like, when you do when you're done, you are like, bruh, it's for, what did I really produce? Like, what did I actually really produce? Like, I'm tired. If I had went with my own money, I am $300 less rich or wealthy. So I don't know. And for me now, it's funny we're talking about this. I think, I wonder what it would look like to really to walk with people, disciple people in that way. To say like, man, those things that you wanted to do, it's fun. It's hurting the Lord's heart, and it's really not gonna produce nothing, you know?
I try
But
to, what I try to do, Q, especially when I'm talking to like the young cats,
yeah,
is I try to give them the full perspective as much as I possibly can and as much as I possibly can remember.
yeah,
Not so much so, because yeah, we get the cookie cutter answer. Hey man, it's not going to be worth it in the end. But what I
yeah.
try to do is I try to walk through why it's not worth it.
Mm,
If that 3 a.m. text comes through and you accept it, which Scotty's going to accept it. That's what he's going to do. I don't know when
Scotty.
it's coming next,
Yeah.
okay? I'm going to take it. So I took it, okay? I bit the apple, okay? Took the cookies out the oven, okay? All right. And I went. The issue now, when you get there, it's cool. When you going through it and you hitting that thing right, it's cool. It's fun. And then you talked about that post clarity that come after. Even that post clarity, see what happens is that even when you going through everything, your faith is still warring because your flesh is fighting against your spirit. Because you know you shouldn't be there, but you enjoying the fact that you are.
Bruh.
So you're
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
You can't even be fully present because your spirit is like,
No.
no. And your flesh is like, yes. And your spirit's like, no. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, I know for people that are not Christians and you see them kind of doing that stuff all the time, you got to understand they're able to enjoy it because they can be fully present in those situations. As a Christian, you can't be fully present. There's always going to be something in your head telling you that, yo, this is not what it's supposed to be. It's going to be something. The Lord is going to tug on you wherever because he goes with you everywhere. Like, hey, man, he ain't just going to be like, hey, you going to that girl house, so I'll see you when you're done. Nah, he there with you. I'm just saying, am I lying? You tell me. He's there with you. So,
No, Paul said it. Paul said, what's it called? If you have sex with a prostitute, the Lord has sex with a prostitute
come on,
as
man.
well. And I'm like, man.
Listen, you go through that moment, you have your fun, and then you get the post clarity at the end. There's a physical post clarity, there's a mental post clarity that you get. And then 24 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours later, that spiritual post clarity kick in. And that's the one that hurt because you knew, and that conviction just hits you hard. And then because you got that spiritual post clarity, it starts communicating with your mind too. And it starts playing games there. Because now you thinking, wait a minute, what if she thought it was something that I didn't think it was? What if she thought it was an emotional thing and I just thought it was a physical thing? Wait a minute, what if she had something, she didn't know she had something, now she gave it to me? I mean, it is getting kind of itchy, bro. Like, I don't know what's going on. You know, the mind, like, listen, the mind gonna play games with you like, wait. And I try to tell the young dudes, like, those are the type of thoughts that are gonna go through your head when you go through that type of things. So now you're living and you're putting undue anxiety on yourself. And also, you got to think about it. You just did something spiritual with somebody else. They may be going through things. And I think some people, I've heard it said, you're adding trauma to their life in somehow, in some way. Yes, you have to take that L. You did add some trauma, but also you added trauma to your own life in that same moment. Because sex is so transactional that you know one person just doesn't walk away with one thing and the other person walks away with nothing. Like something is taken away from both people, and those are something that you have to think about. So you think about her emotions, what she's dealing with, what she may be hiding, what she may not know that she was supposed to be hiding, but really didn't hide and didn't tell you. And then you got to think about yourself as well and where you're at spiritually. And now you are so engulfed with this anxiety that it's making it hard for you to actually connect with the God that you're trying to connect with. And all of that comes after post the fun. So you have to ask yourself. So when you hear they say it's not worth it, that's why they're saying it's not worth it. Because guess what? What happens if there was a small slit in that contraceptive and something leaked through and a miracle happened? Or she thought she was good. You know, Q these days, they good, bro. They be timing they stuff up. You know what I mean? They be like, okay, I can do it this week. I can't do it that week. They good these days. But hey, maybe she miscalculated. Maybe she had one shot too many of a Henny. And she was just like, you know what? I think this week is good. I'm going to hit this man up at 3 a.m. And next thing you know, you planning a baby shower. That's the type of stuff you got to think about because a lot of the times, yeah, you good, bro. Now, a lot of the times you're thinking through these things, but I guess what comes after, shoot, man, what y'all doing, man? What y'all up to? I appreciate y'all. Oh man, Q back? Okay. I'm gonna let
Yeah,
him.
back. Sorry.
He's back. He's back. No, we're good. We're good. All I was saying, Q, was the fact is you don't know the results and you can't control the results and you can't control the consequences. Those are going to happen to you. You don't make those happen. And that's the toughest part about it.
That's a good breakdown, bro. I love that you break it all the way down, man. And I think that goes back to what you said about the day to day as a believer. Because as I'm even thinking about it now, I realize, what if we really thought more about when Jesus says, pick up your cross daily? What if that actually looks like these day to day decisions you're talking about? Like, and it also even begs the question for me why he chose to use the word daily. He could have said, pick up your cross, like, if you want to come after me, pick up your cross. But he was like, pick up your cross daily. And somebody quote me on that if I'm getting that wrong, but it makes you wonder, like, why did he say daily? Like, what was he trying to get at? Like, even to your point, like, the day to day, you know? Maybe it was learning to focus on the present moment, and that's that day. Not on what happened the day before or the day that's coming, but how can I focus on making the decision I need to make for right now? How do I navigate my relationship with the Lord right now and not even tomorrow? I don't know. Because even I heard you process that. I'm like, man, that, and obviously me and you can both attest to not thinking like that. When at least for me, when I was in that season, I wasn't slowing down to think through, man, these are the consequences. This is what can happen. I'm like, nah, you know what? Bump it. bump the consequences. This is what I want. But what's your thought on that, man? Like when you take what you just said and you line it up with Jesus' statement of daily picking up my cross, in what ways do you feel like we've gotten it wrong, maybe? Or what are some things you feel like maybe we missed in that statement because of religiosity or just the churchiness of it?
I think there's a lot of isms that we use that we don't fully understand what they mean. And one of the things I did appreciate about early in our faith walk and listening to, I guess, when we were listening to our Christian hip hop when we were teenagers, it was heavily influenced with Calvinism. And part of the Reformed movement is that they are very detailed in what they talk about. And that, I think that was the cool thing about it, is that you got a theology lesson in every record that you listen to. So it broke down a lot of these terms. And got a chance to really chew on that stuff and truly understand what that means. Like, oh, that's what justification means. Oh, that's what sanctification means. Oh, that's what predestination means. Oh, that's what that means. Oh, okay. All right. And I'm learning all of these terms. I was like, oh, that's what John MacArthur thought about. I didn't even know who John MacArthur was. Shoot, he's Johnny Mac to me, but hey, he sound good, whatever, right? So all of those things, I say that to say is that whenever we read scripture and we're reading scripture, one of the cool things to do is to do a proper exegesis on scripture, meaning a proper understanding of the context in which that scripture was written in and what that scripture is trying to say, and understanding the perspective of the writer and understanding the perspective of God as you're pulling it out. Because a lot of times I think we impose ourselves onto scripture with the narcissism aspect of it and make it all about ourselves, without the exegesis, meaning we don't pull out what's being said in the scripture first. Let's understand what's going on there first. Let's understand what that means. To your point, pick up my cross daily. I didn't think about that until you just said it. Hey, he did say daily. Why did he say daily? What does picking up the cross mean? What comes with that? Because when I think picking up the cross, I'm picturing when Jesus was picking up the cross and he was walking on Golgotha. That's what I'm thinking about. But is that what it means? Is that what he was saying? That's what that means? Not sure. But I think it is okay, especially as a Christian. And I'm talking to my Christians out there that maybe have been doing this thing a long time. And maybe there's some expectations about you. It's okay to kind of sit down for a minute and get back to the basics, because it's always about the fundamentals. Everything that you do in life is always about the fundamentals. If you lose the fundamentals, then you lose the entire thing. You can't build a building without a foundation. If that foundation is affected, the entire building falls. Even if the building is 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 feet high, if that foundation is trashed, that building is going to fall. It is important to understand that. And that's where my opportunity is me going back to those foundational things, understanding what the gospel is, understanding how to properly share the gospel, things that seem rudimentary or elementary, right? And I think a lot of times, and I'm never comfortable with this. I'm not comfortable with this. The whole milk to meat thing. Like, if you're still drinking milk, that means you like, bro, you ain't really like that. Like, get on meat. Like, we almost, like, if you're drinking milk, you better get on meat right away. So before you can even understand and enjoy the milk, like, you supposed to be eating meat. Like, I don't know. Again, I'm not going to get off on a tangent there, but I'm just saying sometimes, hey, if you've been eating meat for a while and you forgot what the milk is all about, go back and study that. Maybe you can extract things. I mean, look, Q, it's not anything that anybody doesn't know. How many times have you watched a TV show or something from when you were a kid and you watched it back as an adult and you picked up on things that you didn't notice as a kid? So why we think it don't happen with our faith? There's certain things that you learned early in your faith that you thought you understood. If you go back and you read the same thing again, you'll be able to pull out things because now you got experience.
Bruh, that's man. And I mean, if Paul could say, I want to know nothing except Christ crucified, which is like the fundamental of the fundamental. We're talking about a Paul. I think people forget that Paul my pastor once said that we forget that Paul technically was a triple PhD. I think study of the law, and there's a couple more. Help me out. I can't
Oh
remember.
no, Paul. Listen, Paul was that guy. When it came to the education piece of it, you're not touching that man right now.
Boy, but he wanted to say nothing except Christ crucified. And honestly, bro, like just to affirm what you said, Brian, I really appreciate you saying that. The two things about if you're on meat, you can go back and drink some milk, or if you're at milk, don't feel like you gotta rush. Like you're not less than for being that stage. And ultimately, I think what we both kind of talked about is the power of slowing down, bro. I get now why, like, you look at someone like Ezekiel when Ezekiel goes and confronts Jezebel, and then Jezebel says, and I know I'm throwing out like a lot of biblical characters right now, but and Jezebel says, "I'm coming to kill you," because Ezekiel essentially had stood up in front, confronted Jezebel's prophets. Fire came down, or no, they set up altars, and Ezekiel was like, "Call down your gods to burn up your altar, and I'll call down mine." They called down theirs. Theirs didn't do anything. He puts water on his altar, calls down God of fire, and God consumes the altar, even with water on it. And then Jezebel says, "I'm going to kill you." And he runs, and he's depressed. And it was so funny to me. The first thing God does is give him bread and food and says, "Go to sleep because you're going to need this." And he does it, I think, for a couple amount of days. And I was like, God doesn't try to like tell him, "Yo, you need to like be more mature, Ezekiel. I can't believe you did that. How can you be so depressed? You're probably not even saved. Like you." He's like, "Here's some bread. Here's some meat." He ate and ate and ate until, and then went to sleep. That's the first thing that happened, Scott. And bro, what it did for me made me realize, like, why do we think we don't have to have periods where we need to slow down? Because we out of whack and we depressed and we struggling. And God's like, stop, slow down. And I'm speaking to myself right now, like, slow down. You know?
Jesus.
Yeah, man.
Nah, that's real, man. That's real. Q, that was good, bro. Yo, check this out real quick, man. Before we get up out of here, our boy Cam Newton was in some hot water these past 2 weeks, man. You saw that?
Really?
Yeah, man. Did you see that?
I did it, man. Catch me up. Catch me up.
Cam Newton, he has this show called Funky Fridays that he does, and he had a guest on there. Her name was Dr. Cheyenne Bryant, and she is a relationship coach, I believe, sorts. Cam Newton is a great father. He takes pride in being a great father. The issue that was brought up on this particular podcast was that Cam Newton has 8 kids from 3 baby mamas. She, being the relationship coach, obviously did not agree with the way that he went about it. But he was trying to justify his actions in terms of why he went about the way that he did, and also the fact that he is a great father and the kids are all provided for and taken care of, even though they don't all come from the same mother. Okay. She obviously had an issue with that. She broke it down for him. It was bad. You go back and watch the video. It was insane. I had a quick thought on this. There's a bunch of reactions that people have on this because we're kind of late to the party here. So people have been talking and picking this whole thing apart. But the one thing, and I've been purposely not trying to, read comments and comment on this stuff because I wanted to save it for the show. But one of the things that brought to my mind, this whole having multiple kids, the Nick Cannon, the Cam Newton thing, it's a rich man's game that some poor people try to play. Unfortunately, it's
Ooh. Scott, say that again.
the multiple baby mamas that having kids with different parents and all this thing. It is a rich man's game that some poor people try to play. And unfortunately, it will make the rich people poor and it'll make the poor people even more poor. And it doesn't work in the grand scheme of things. The thing that needs to be understood though, right, is that I think this is where the disparity happens when we're talking about relationships and dating, especially in this current era, is that separating the fact that being a great parent versus being a great partner. Are you a great, because you're a great father, does that make you a great husband? Because you're a great husband, does that make you a great father? I truly believe that those are two different skill sets. I truly believe that those skill sets are supposed to be meshed within one household, where you have a father who's also a husband and you have a wife who is also a mother, and all the kids are under them. But to your understanding, a lot of that doesn't work, right? I didn't come into that situation. I wasn't born into that situation, right? You weren't born into that situation. A lot of people that we know, a lot of people that we all know, and we always reference celebrities and things because those are people that we can reference to because a lot of people know them. But a lot of people do come from what we call quote unquote broken homes. I just want to say that just because you come from a broken home, it doesn't mean that you are destined for a broken life. It doesn't mean you should purposely create a broken home. But I think just having that term broken home, it automatically makes it seem like that kid is behind. I don't know, Q, because I'll keep it a buck with you. I never viewed my situation growing up as being broken. I always had what I needed. When it came to male influences, yes, I didn't have my father, but I did have my uncles. I did have my stepfather. I did have male figures in my life that were positively pouring into me in several different ways. So those voids were filled to a degree. Yes, there was always a gap because I didn't have my actual biological father there with me. So you could say it was broken that way. But I think just as what a child needs in growing up and things, I never felt like I didn't have what I needed. And I think that's a testament to my mother. And what's your perspective on all that?
No, that's actually a good present. And that kind of challenged me. So I appreciate you for saying it that way because I definitely grew up on the opposite end where I very much, my identity, my lack of self esteem was wrapped up in the fact that my house was broken. Call it my own thoughts, maybe some of the shame and honor culture of being Ghanaian and African. But I very much remember like I tied my identity to the fact that my dad is not around while I'm single. But like what you realize is, and to your point, man, like the Lord, like the Lord is good in the fact that He brings so many people around. I think back to our youth pastors, right? Like for me, those were like I think back to how young they were, and I'm like, dang, bro, the pressure on them, right? Like I think about that like giant Nipe, but
Yeah,
like,
like you their age now that they were then.
bruh, and I'm like, bro, like we were looking at them, and like at least for me, looking at them as like mini fathers for me. But that's something I've had to work myself out of is like realizing, man, you know what? I'm not automatically broken. I think it's going back to Cam and Nick Cannon and them. And like, I'll say one more thing. I think the other thing that I'm learning as a therapist is there are a lot of families where divorce happens, and if the parents co-parent well, the kid, they say the kid statistically ends out comes out what really mature and really healthy. Sometimes even more healthy than maybe two parent households because two parent household may not always be showing healthy relationship.
It comes, and let me make a point of order and a perspective on this. Cam
Yeah.
Newton does come from a two-parent household, and his father's a minister.
Uh,
So
that is
yeah,
perspective. I didn't think
there's a
about that.
perspective there.
Huh, that's interesting. And that's good because that also goes to show you, though the statistics are there, it's not always one sided, right? Like someone from a two parent household can have that situation. I think my biggest qualm that I must have a quote from Jason Wilson's book, Battle Cry. He said that a young man one time came to him and asked him and told him like, "Hey, I'm a black man and I want to be a positive influence in my community, the black community." And Jason was, and she was like, he was asking Jason, "How can I be that?" And Jason simply looked at him and said, "Get married." And he was like, "What?" He's like, "Get married." He's like, "We underestimate." I think to your point, going back to the emphasis on don't purposely create them. I think we underestimate the power of not just fathering our kids, but our kids seeing the model of healthy relationships or the model of how a man treats a woman. I had a client once tell me they're a great dad because they treat their daughter well. And I was like, you know what? You're probably right. I was like, my only pushback to you is your daughter is learning how you treat her as a dad, But right now, she has no concept of how a husband treats a wife because she's not like you're not, you know. And I was like, you're still gonna be a great dad, but I think there's an opportunity because he was remarried at the time, and the daughter wasn't getting to be around his new wife. And I was like, there's another perspective you can have of allowing her to see, okay, this is how dad treats me, and oh, this is how dad, who's a husband, also husband treats his wife, you know. And so I think for me, that is my biggest pushback with celebrities, athletes. Like I see athletes all the time, and I don't know all their stories, but I see athletes who like, particularly male athletes who have the kids all around, but there's no mom to be seen. And sometimes the wife literally is just private. Sometimes it's like there's no mom, they're separated. And I'm always curious, like I want to celebrate him being present, but I also am like, man, for your kid also, it'd be good for them to see that. So that's the place that I've wrestled with the most. Yeah, I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I wanted to ask you this question, and it's kind of always puzzled me. And we talk about celebrities and athletes and things like that, right? How come the LeBron James, Steph Curry model is not emulated more with the celebrities? I know it's emulated more. I know it's emulated in terms of like people that are not, that don't have platform, but in terms of the people that are platformed, how come they don't follow LeBron's model or follow Steph Curry's model? Why isn't that so prevalent? Or even Russell Wilson. I mean, Russell Wilson, I know that's kind of a quote unquote broken situation because he's a stepfather or whatever. But I would say to a strong degree the Steph Curry and the LeBron James model. Why isn't that the prevalent model that a lot of these celebrities and athletes follow?
Man, that is a good question. I don't even want to answer. I do find that that's interesting, bro. Because I think about it like LeBron, and those are two great examples, bro. Because LeBron came from a different situation,
He
what we consider a broken home, and Steph came from, at least back then, two-parent household. And I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if it's not emulated because it's not as publicized. It's not as boosted. Why can't we say that? Like Steph Curry gets a lot of shine for Riley and everything.
and
Like,
I mean Braun. I mean, look at Braun.
yeah,
Like
Ronnie.
Savannah's like the first lady of sports, and the way they view her, and
That's so true.
know,
I don't know, bruh. I don't know if it's. I think some of it too, because they say, well, with Steph, I think having the model would probably really, really help. I think with LeBron, you also see a LeBron who they say, man, like even at 17, LeBron was thinking light years ahead of his peers, right? Like I hear about like LeBron not taking I think Adidas deal for $1 million because he wanted to go with Nike because he was already thinking like. And so I wonder too sometimes if we go back to the reality that a lot of our athletes come into fortune and fame at a really, really young age, and they don't always maybe get the old head to kind of be like, bruh. Like I always think about Dwight Howard. I love Dwight Howard. And one time I went and watched a YouTube clip of like his high school days where he was like giving testimony to the Lord. And then I think about, man, like he gets in NBA, and it's not judging him by no means, right? But like he ends up having like I think 8 kids, right? And like different baby mamas, and he's pulling all that directions. And I'm like, what really happened there? And I wonder if some of it is like we're expecting these young men be mature young men who would kind of emulate things with a lot of money and a lot of options. Like I think about Zion. We've gone on to Zion so much, but like the man has money and knew he could go into the DMs and get what he wanted.
yeah,
Um,
Zion, Anthony Edwards, any of these Jalen Green, any of these young cats, man, money, pocket, and then now we live in such a social era where everybody has access to each other,
hmm
and that DM it's a different thing, man. It's a different thing, but yeah, no, it's definitely it's good things to think about, man. But I think it's good to put a cap on that on this
yeah,
one tonight. But yeah, man, definitely good conversation, good topics. We'll
yeah,
definitely hit
man.
it up in the
Really
next
cool.
one. Do you have any last things you want to say?
No, this blessed me, man. This was really good. I'm glad
Mhm.
to be back for us to start doing this.
Yep.
And really like, I think we talked about before, like I am appreciative of the fact that we can say things and we're learning to say things, me and you both, as people that I don't think sometimes this space was always created for us to say. And I think that's healing in a way. And so, if anything, I think, as we've said before, the encouragement to people as they listen is one, as you listen, don't listen for us for perfection in what we were talking about. I think listen to our heart and where our heart is directed towards, right? To want to know Jesus more and want to do this life authentically. And I don't think Jesus would have it. I don't think he would have it any other way. So to listen, not just for perfection, but for, I guess, direction, if anything. And then two, prayerfully that some of these conversations are healing for other people, for those who are watching. And I use the word healing because we are also healing. We are going through a healing process. We're in it. We're in the middle of it. We're not at the other side, and we don't get there until we see Jesus. So those are my two thoughts. I think final thoughts.
Amen. No, I echo those sentiments. This is definitely, and speak up is apropos, because it is, we need to. Anytime you need to heal, it needs to be revealed. You can't heal without being revealed. You can't heal without you being vulnerable. And vulnerability is necessary. Being able to speak like this is necessary. And I think I've always seen this type of conversation happen. It's just I've not seen it from a Christian perspective be fleshed out. Maybe outside of, the Tim Ross basement talks, but even that, as that grows bigger, I think anytime something grows bigger, it becomes disconnected to the common person. So hopefully we can be that for the common person, the unplatformed, and kind of do it that way. Speaking of which, if I was a celebrity or somebody with influence and a platform right now that you wanted to ask a question to, who would I be and what question would you want to ask?
So man, I was thinking of two. At first, I was
So
going to
what you want
ask.
to do is you want to look right in the camera like you talking to them and be like, yo,
Ooh,
sir or madam, this is my question.
man, I'm trying to decide. I was thinking either of Tim Ross or Lecrae. I
You
think I'll
take you
go.
take you take Tim, I'll take Cray. For this
Okay,
one,
okay,
for
okay.
this one.
Yeah, 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 okay, okay. So for Tim Ross, I guess my question, Timmy, as we affectionately call you in the basement, the dwellers, you've talked a lot about going through the season of porn and the struggles and your wife and navigating that. And I think I'm curious, what was it like? And you talked about it before, but I really am curious, what was it like to go through that process and then start having sons and who you're trying to figure out, like, how do I how do I help them walk in purity, but also just be real men? Like for me, I just be curious, like, what is that like to say, man, like I know what I've seen and done, and I'm trying to set the bar high for my sons. What is that process like? Maybe some lessons in there too. Maybe ultimately some lessons in fatherhood. So that's my question for you, Timmy. Would love your thoughts on that.
Crazy, Crayola, as they used to say back in the day. The question that I have for you is, how do you, as an artist who's been in the game for 20 plus years, view your old music and your old records? Because for me, as a fan, as somebody that listened to it when I was younger, it has a nostalgic feel for me. And it takes me back to a time period in my life that I'll never let go. But you, as an artist, has always have to think about the next album or the next thing you're doing. Do you go back and listen to your old records with a different perspective? Are you interested in performing your old records? And what would the Cray right now say to the Cray in 2004 that was recording Real Talk? That's my question for you. All right, Q, man, we're good. Let's go ahead and do this, man. Until next time, we appreciate you guys hanging out with us on Speak Up. Man, we might have to do like a
Love
live
you.
thing and get people engagement, but it'll be time, man. We'll get guests on here. Things will grow. We're gonna grind this whole thing out, Q.
Man,
Yes, sir, man. But
excited.
yeah, man. Until next time, man. We're
Yeah,
signing out.
man.
We'll see you
Love
guys.
y'all. Peace out.
God bless. Stay prayed up. Read your Bibles and pray.
Yes, sir.